Welcome back.
So one of the most common questions we get is how to find a product to sell on Amazon. So Mike, how do you find a product that will sell well on Amazon? How do you determine that?
Well, so a lot of people, they think that in order to sell on Amazon, that you have to invent something or you have to like create something brand new. That's actually the hardest way to get started on Amazon.
Why is that?
Well, because people think that's what Amazon is known for, right? People think that there's all these unique products that people invented. Mm-hmm. That's actually not true at all. What the most common and the easiest way to get started on Amazon is you find products that are already doing well. So there's a tool, and I'm going to give it to you right now. It's called Amazon Product Finder. With that tool, what it does is if you go to Amazon Product Finder, it's really cool because there's an extension you can get for your Chrome browser, and there's also a web app. Now, with the web app, what's really cool about that is you can put in a category. So let me give you an example. Like, let's say that, you don't want to come up with a great idea. I know that sounds funny, right? Like, you don't want to like come up with like, oh, let me think of, this extendable back scratcher that no one's ever sold, right? Like, you're thinking like, I have to think of some product, but all you really have to do is if you go to the Amazon Product Finder and you put a category. So let's say you put home and kitchen. If you put in home and kitchen, you could find sellers that are already doing well. That's the key. So there's 3 criteria that I always look for. Does it already sell well? Can I compete? And are the margins there? Right? So let's talk about the first one. Does it already sell well? So that's the number 1 criteria. So when you use Amazon Product Finder, you want to go to that site. It's a web app. And you want to put in any category you want. I don't care if it's, I'll tell you a lot of the really good categories: home and kitchen, pet supplies, outdoors, those fitness. A lot of those things are already really good categories. Now, what you do is you just put in the category and then you put in the criteria you want. So number 1 criteria, does it sell well? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I was going to see what the process is after that.
Yeah, so just knowing that it already sells well. So
right.
And what you'll really like about this is if you put in whatever you want. So you could say, like, if you want to know, does it sell well? All you have to do is
start with a category.
Yes.
Okay.
And then after you have your category,
you put in your criteria that you wanted to match. Is it?
That's right. So
what is that criteria?
That's good. Yeah, that's a great question. So the criteria that you actually want to put in there. So once you put the category, what I want to know is I want to see products that have less than 50 reviews.
Why is that?
Because if a product has less than 50 reviews, then you know that you can compete.
Oh, okay.
So because if you see a product with 2,000 or 3,000 reviews, that's going to be really hard to get. I mean, it could take you years before you could have thousands of reviews, if it ever happens at all.
Right.
But if you see that a product already sells well, so what I want to see, and part of does the product already sell well, are there multiple sellers that are doing at least 5, 6, 7, 8,000 a month? If you see a product where one seller's doing ridiculous amount of, 80, 90,000, and then everyone else is doing like a few hundred or 1,000.
Right. It's hard to beat them.
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to be hard to compete.
Right.
So what I really like is, that's why I use those 3 things. Does it already sell well? Because I'm not trying to recreate the wheel.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And then the second thing that we want to know is, can I compete? And can I compete means
that's with the reviews and...
That's right, because if we know that they have 50 reviews or less and they're doing 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, and there's multiple sellers doing that level, then you know that that's a good entry point. The third thing is, are the margins there? So what you need to know is, so in you're probably thinking like, how do you know if the margins are there?
Yeah, right. Well, what determines a good margin? What exactly is that for profit?
So what I'm looking at is I don't want to sell. I mean, this is my criteria, right? So I'm just sharing with you guys how I've done really well on Amazon is using these criterias. And it's never about finding a product that you're passionate about. It's about finding a product that meets these 3 criteria. And if it ends up being profitable for you, you might end up becoming more passionate about it, right? Like, that's just, it's human nature.
So the product doesn't necessarily have to match you or who you are. You don't have to be passionate about the product itself.
Not at all. No,
So long
because
it sells well.
and that's where a lot of people get hung up, is they're thinking like they want to sell like the next cool, amazing gadget, right? Like
Right.
there's nothing really cool about, you know, a spiralizer, you know, like that people would be passionate about that. But that was a product that, you know, and you'll notice too, you know, we won't really mention people's products because, you know, it's not really fair to the students in the group to
Right.
mention their product. And, you know, just my last podcast that I did got over 2.7 million downloads. So you don't really want to, you know,
2.7 million people copying them.
yeah, and that's not really fair to them.
Right.
So, you know, you'll hear us talk a lot about categories because that's really good to talk about categories, but you won't really hear too much about people's products. So when we get to are the margins there, that's the third criteria. And I wouldn't say that's the most important because all three are pretty much equally important. Does it sell well? Can I compete? Are the margins there? Those are three pretty equal weighted. So, and if you hit all three, then that's a product that I'm willing to run with. Now, are the margins there? It just means if you go, and everybody can Google this, if you go to FBA calculator, you can get an idea of what those fees are that Amazon charges. Because you got to remember, Amazon does the entire process.
What exactly do they do?
So the way that it works with the FBA is, so you find the right product in China, or you find it locally here in the US, and you find that product, and instead of shipping it to your garage or some storage unit, you have that product shipped directly to Amazon's warehouse.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they actually house it, they warehouse it.
So you're saying that we don't have to like rent a warehouse or store products in our garage?
No, and that's what a lot of people think, right? Like they're thinking the eBay format where, you know, you take all the junk in your house and you put it online and,
Right.
you know, then you're shipping it to the customer. You're handling returns, complaints. What's so amazing about Amazon, and that's what I fell in love with right away, is that I don't have to worry about customer service. I don't have to worry about any phone calls. I don't have to worry about storing the product. I don't have to worry about shipping the product. All I have to do is every time I'm running low on a product, reorder that product, gets shipped directly to Amazon. From there, every time, and Amazon facilitates the sale. They're their own merchant account, right? So you don't need a merchant processor. You don't need PayPal, any of those things. It's really cool because Amazon, they're the one that sells it to the customer. And you make that profit. So when I say FBA fees, and we're going to talk all about like how FBA works.
What is FBA? So
FBA stands for Fulfillment by Amazon.
Okay.
So now you do have the option, and we'll go into really deep on this. What I want to make sure we're focused on, because this is the first step,
Right,
is finding the product. How do you know what to sell? And it's cool because I have a really good training video where I actually walk you through how to use Amazon Product Finder. So if you guys go to amsecrets.com, that's amsecrets.com, all you have to do is enter your first name, your email address, and I'll send you that video report so you can actually learn exactly how to find the right product. Now, when we're talking about the margins, this is a really easy way to do it. So once you've gotten Amazon Product Finder and you've put in a category and you've determined what products make the most sense, now, before you know that it's a good product, because initially all you're going to know is that it sells well, because we can find that out. We'll know, number two, that you can compete, because you'll see, because you need to see many sellers. I want to reiterate that. You need to see that there's at least 4 or 5 sellers, maybe more. Sometimes, you know, there's products that have less than 50 reviews. In fact, I've seen some that have less than 10 reviews.
Oh, wow.
And they're doing 5,000-6,000 a month. And there's multiple sellers doing that. So that means you can compete. Now, the only thing that you can't find out from the Amazon Product Finder is you can't find out the third thing, are the margins there?
Okay.
But that's really easy. So do you know how you would do that?
So how do you determine what are good margins?
So what I do, now, of course, there's all kinds of people that are located in China, around the world, around the country, that you can actually source products for. I have a whole video about that. It's over an hour long showing you how to source, and how to actually get quotes and all that. But let me tell you the easy way. Everyone always loves the easy way. So the easy way is there's a site called Alibaba.com. It's free. And that just gives you baseline pricing. And you don't want to go by what it says. So let's use, like this microphone stand as an example. So let's use this as an example. So this microphone stand right here. If I went to Amazon Product Finder, and I put in stereo equipment, and it popped up with this mic stand, and I saw that a mic stand in general, it doesn't have to be this one, but I saw that mic stands in general, that there were a number of sellers that had less than 50 reviews, and there was a number of sellers that were doing, and everybody, like, I can't tell you how much money is good, but I want to see, to me, I want to see that there's at least 4 or 5 sellers that are doing at least 5,000.
Okay.
And I don't want to see one seller doing 100,000 and then all the other sellers doing $1,000.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because then that means I can't really compete. Because getting 50 reviews ethically and legally and doing it the right way, that's not hard. That's just following a process as well. Because reviews, you know, a lot of people think like, oh, you know, you can't really be that successful unless you have hundreds and hundreds of reviews. That's definitely not true. You know, in our group, you see that there's a lot of sellers that are in categories and they're doing well and they don't have hundreds and hundreds of reviews, right?
Right. So then when you find that on Amazon Product Finder, then you go to Alibaba?
Yeah, so that's right. So so that's our third step, right? So these mic stands right here. So we found that there's you know, 4 or 5 sellers doing at least 5,000. We see that there's people with less than 50 reviews that are doing well, because that's what's so cool about Amazon Product Finder. It shows you how many reviews each product has, how many, they project it. So it's a rough estimate, but they project how much money each seller does per month, and they're pretty accurate because I've plugged in my own products and it's like within a few percentage points. I mean, there's no perfect science. I believe it's like they take the amount of sales you've done in like the last 7 days, and then they extrapolate that over a 30-day period, and they figure, you know, based on, you know, if your 7-day average, so let's just use easy numbers. And I believe this is how it works. Like, they're very secretive about the formula, but just based on trial and error and testing, I believe that, so let's say over 7 days, you did 28 sales. So they would say you do 4 sales a day, and then times it by 30 days. And then they would say that you do 120 sales a month based on the price of your item. They'll give you how much money you're generating, gross revenue per month. So with these mic stands in mind, so now we know that we can compete. We know that it sells well. Now the third thing is the margin. So just like you said, go to Alibaba, and then you would literally put in mic stands.
Just type in mic stands.
Yeah, and that what's cool about this is it's not going to give you, so you have to actually email them to get an actual quote, but they'll give you approximations. They'll say if you order 100 of these, they would be $6 each. Okay. Now, I can't tell you how much money you need to make on a product, right? But if it's me, I want products that and you can only worry about gross initially. We'll dive into what is shipping and all that stuff, but out of the gate, like, I wouldn't mess with this mic stand unless, so let's just say that they were selling for $20. Like, that seems like the price point based on Amazon Product Finder. That retail on Amazon, it sells for about $20. Now, what I want to do is I want to say, okay, well, I need to have at least 4 or 5 on the gross, 4 or 5 times. So I wouldn't, me personally, if it was a mic stand, because that's also, like, just say they're only $20. I would not buy it unless I was doing 5 times my money. Now, that's why it's a sliding scale. Does that make sense?
Why is that? 5 times more?
Yeah, because it's a cheap product. Now, but if I'm selling, let's say, like a bounce house, let's just say, like, let's use like a really extreme example. Let's say that we go to Amazon Product Finder. We know that it sells well. We know we can compete. Now we need to know about the margins, right? So are you pretty clear on, does it sell well? Can I compete?
I think the criteria makes sense.
Okay.
Now it's just the margins and how exactly you're going to determine. Yeah,
so let's talk about that, right? So how we're going to determine if the margins are there. So let's use like an extreme example, because people always say, like, what multiplier do you want? Yeah. Right? Like, if I'm buying something that sells for $10, I'm not going to buy it unless I can get it for like less than $1, right? So I would want 10 times my margins because it's a cheap product and after fees. So all you need to know, like, this is my criteria. If I'm selling a bounce house though, and like, let's say that they're selling really well for $200. Now, if I can get that product for $80, so it's not even 3 times
but it's
multiplier, but it's big chunks of money each time, right? So when people say, like, you know, sometimes you want 10 times, sometimes you want 5 times, sometimes you want only 3 times. So that's how I'm determining it.
Depends and varies on the product itself.
That's right, because, wouldn't you like that product if there's like 120 like gross profit on it?
Yeah.
As opposed to like selling, let's say it's a really nice mechanical pencil and it sells for $10. Like it wouldn't, but let's just say, and you got it for $1, right? That's great, but you're only making $9 per sale. Right. So you need to make 10 times your money. I mean, that's why this is my formula. This isn't like what I read in a book or saw on TV. This is like what's been successful.
And it works every time.
For our students. And it works every time. Yeah, that's something that does work every time, because if you know that the margins are there, you need to determine if that's the right product for you. So what's really cool about that, so now we see on Alibaba baseline pricing. Now we're going to actually send emails to the suppliers on Alibaba. That's still just giving us an idea, so that, because you need a point to work from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right.
Because you can't just, say, like if they say, oh, we sell this bounce house for $80. Now, like that is not a bona fide quote. So you need to send them an email and say, because that they might say, well, yeah, I wrote that it's $80 on my listing, but that's if you buy 10,000 of them.
Okay, so
right, so like
quantity plays into the
for
price.
Sure. So like one of the term that we always use is called MOQ, minimum order quantity. So this is, and I'm going to tell you guys, this is exactly what you email to the people on Alibaba. You say, I found your bounce house on Alibaba. I see that there's a bunch of sellers, in your category selling it. Remember, Alibaba, this is just to get baseline pricing, because then we're going to go to the people on the ground in China and have them find either one of two things, a better quality or a better price. So I don't mind if it's, so let's use the bounce house as an example. So they'll say, well, and I ask how many. So I say, if I order 100, what's my price? If I order, so I always just to give me an idea, I never order 100 of anything.
But do you want to start with a smaller amount first?
Well, you do.
And then forecast the future with
but you want quotes on all three, just so you know. So you do want to say, like, if I order 100, even though we all know no one's going to order 100 of a product, right? That's just a waste of time. Like, if something's, $5, you're not going to spend $500 on it. You might want to get 1,000 of them, right? And if it's a $1 product, then you might want to get several thousand. If it's a higher, and it's all depends on how much money you're working with too. Some people like to invest $2,000 in inventory. That's very doable. That's not really going to put a dent in their finances. To some people, that is. They'd have to put it on credit cards or things like that. But if you're pretty well funded, let's just say that all you need to care about is how much is it for 100? How much is it for 500? How much is it for 1,000? How much is it for 3,000? How much is it for 5,000? So I like to just ask all those things, because it'll help me determine how many I want to start with. Because if they're say, well, if you only buy 100 of them, it's going to be $130. If you buy 500, it's 110. If you buy 1,000, it's 90. Like if it's a significant price difference, then it's something I'm going to be interested in. Now, if you're selling a keychain, right? Like you're not going to ask like for a 50-cent keychain, or let's say it's a bottle opener keychain. Maybe it has like some inspiration or something written on it. If you're going to sell something like that where they're 70 cents each, you're not going to buy 100. You're not going to spend $70 on product, right? So you're not even like, there's no point to ask how many is 100. So I'm giving you just the guidelines. So you email them and you say, and I need to know how much is shipping and what is your turnaround time, just so I know baseline, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to order through them, but it might end up, because I'm going to ask for 2 or 3 quotes from different suppliers that I find on Alibaba. And then if I really like the product and it really makes sense numbers wise, remember, when I say I like the product, it doesn't mean like I personally care about it. It means that I like the numbers. Right. I like the fact that it already sells well. I like the fact that I can compete. I like, that's everything I like about it. So in this case, all we need to worry about now is what is shipping, and I want to touch it. I want to feel it. So I want to sample. I want to, because I don't want to sell junk. I only want to sell good quality products. It's not that I need to be passionate about them, but I need to know that, I'm doing right by people, that I'm not just selling trash or garbage.
You always test out your product before.
Always. So I would say never, ever, like, and I've seen people do it, and, because the picture looks really good, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to order it. I'm going to place the order. And because it is true, you might spend $50, $60. You might spend $100 because the shipping is what you're getting beat up on for your sample. But would you say $100 is good? Like to realize that it was a piece of junk, you know? So it's like you're hedging your bet, you know? So you want to factor in that you are going to have some shipping costs back and, you know, not back and forth because you don't return it. You just end up with that product. But now once we have those quotes, once we know exactly how much shipping is, once we know exactly what are the thresholds for each MOQ, once we know that, now is when we want to worry about reaching out. You know, there's a company that works with all of my students. So they have 34 people on the ground in China. And they work directly with us to make sure that we're able to find really good. So we find the product and then we tell them, hey, I found this product. And because now all I want them to do is either beat the price, like I mentioned, and match the quality, or I want them to beat the quality and beat the price. But one or the other, I want better quality for the same price, or I want same quality for a cheaper price. And as long as I have that, because I already know the numbers worked. Right. So I already know, okay, this is what I'm looking at on the product. And if my margins are there and the margins I'm comfortable with, I know I can compete, I know it sells well, I'm good to go. And, you know, I'm definitely simplifying it. And that's why, I have an hour and a half video just about where it's straight teaching. We're on the computer screen. I'm actually showing you how to use the Amazon product finder. And it's our most common thing we get, right? Like that's a question we get all the time. All the time. But it's also like a really fun thing to teach and to do. It's like, you know, like you feel like me sometimes at like 1 a.m, I'll get like some idea and I'll race to Amazon Product Finder. Okay, does it already sell well? You know, are the margins there? Can I compete? And then like my wheels start turning and, you know, I end up for, you know, another hour and a half. So it's actually fun. Like I don't even see it as like, oh, I got to go find more products. It's like, I'm excited to do it. Like some people like to play video games or, you know, watch reality TV. I like to, you know, look for products.
Margins.
So does that make sense? That process of, and that's my criteria. And that's why it's really cool having this training course. And, you know, I wanted to make this for 2018, this podcast. So, you know, the last podcast got over 2.7 million downloads. And the idea with this podcast is to share what's working right now in 2018. Not the outdated stuff. You know, I hear so many other shows where people are talking about stuff that worked 5 years ago. So that's why this is the 2018. It's brand new. Yeah, and it's a new year. It's time to kick it off with a bang. So next time we have some really cool topics that we'll be talking about. So join us on the next show, and we have a really cool thing that we want to share with you.